My boss made me drive 40 minutes for every false alarm. Then he had to cover my shift during my honeymoon when I took the job as security manager at Westlake Contemporary Art Museum. The arrangement was perfect. I lived just 3 blocks away, the pay was decent, and most importantly, the previous security director had installed a state-of-the-art system that let me check cameras remotely when alarms triggered. For 2 years, this system worked flawlessly. Our museum housed pieces worth millions, but the sophisticated alarm system was prone to false alerts, usually from temperature changes affecting the laser grid or the occasional mouse scurrying across the marble floors at night. I'd get an alert, check the cameras from my phone, verify it was nothing, and go back to sleep. In 2 years, we had 347 alarms and 0 actual break-ins. Then Richard took over as director. He came from the corporate banking world with 0 museum experience but plenty of opinions on security protocols. During his first week, a small gallery across town was robbed. The next morning, Richard called an emergency staff meeting. "This is exactly why we need to tighten security," he announced, pacing dramatically. "Effective immediately. All alarms must be physically investigated in person. No exceptions." "No exceptions. My monitoring is insufficient." I raised my hand. "Richard, our system is actually more advanced than the gallery that was robbed." "They didn't have no exceptions," he interrupted. "If you are not willing to ensure the safety of priceless artwork, perhaps we need someone who will." That night, the first alarm went off at 1:17 a.m. I drove in, did a full walkthrough, and found nothing paired just as the cameras had already shown me. I got home at 2:30 a.m. only to be awakened again at 4:45 a.m. by another alarm. Another drive, another walk through, another false alarm. This became my new normal. The museum's environmental control system would adjust the temperature at night, causing minute shifts in air pressure that triggered the hypersensitive motion detectors. I was averaging 3 to 4 calories per night, functioning on maybe 2 to 3 hours of broken sleep. After 2 weeks, I compiled data showing we'd had 27 false alarms, requiring 54 hours of unpaid overtime. Richard refused to pay for alarm responses, calling it part of the salary position. I created a presentation showing how the remote monitoring system was actually more effective because fatigue was making my in-person responses slower and less thorough. We make sacrifices for culture. By week 3, I was a zombie. I accidentally set off an alarm myself by entering the wrong code, then locked my keys in my car while responding to another 3 a.m. call. My doctor warned me about the health effects of severe sleep deprivation. That's when fate intervened in the form of my long-planned honeymoon parenta, a 2-week trip to Portugal that had been booked a year in advance. According to museum protocol, when the security manager is unavailable, responsibility falls to the museum director. "You can't possibly expect me to respond to middle-of-the-night alarms," Richard protested when I reminded him of this policy parrot, which he himself had emphasized during his security is everyone's responsibility speech. "It's in the protocol manual you asked us all to sign," I replied, sliding across the document with his signature. "And since you established that remote monitoring is insufficient the night before my flight, I trained Richard on the alarm response procedures, secretly delighting in his growing horror as I detailed the full 46-step protocol he'd insisted we follow for each alarm, including the mandatory documentation. "How often do these alarms actually go off?" he asked nervously. "Hard to say," I replied truthfully. "Sometimes it's quiet for days, other times it's quite active." I left for my honeymoon the next morning. What I didn't mention was that the museum was installing a new climate control system that week, something that would almost certainly trigger the sensitive alarm systems multiple times as temperatures and air pressure fluctuated. I was sipping sangria on a Portuguese beach when my co-worker Maria texted me. "Richard got called in for gins last night. He looked like death this morning." The next day, 3 more alarms. Richard is asking if here is any way to check cameras first before driving in. By day 3, emergency staff meeting. Richard announced a system upgrade that allows for preliminary remote verification before physical response. When I returned from my honeymoon, I found a completely new policy in place. The exact remote monitoring system I had been using for 2 years was now officially protocol, with an added bonus. All after-hours alarm responses now qualified for overtime pay. Richard avoided eye contact with me for weeks. When he finally addressed the policy change in a staff meeting, he presented it as his own